Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of the Point One podcast. Joined today by your host, as always, myself, Mr. Chris Carlos, and my best friend, Mr. Brendan Lee. Brendan, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, guys. So today we're going to talk about saying yes to opportunities in life and how that can lead you to be even more successful. So I'll hand back now to Chris, and he can talk through some of the premises of that.
Yeah, so today is going to be titled The Yes Man. So how does the Yes Man bring you from good to great to that 0.1% that we're always aiming for? Basically, the premise of this podcast, I suppose, really came about a week ago when we were lost in the Eastern European jungles or forests, should I say. We did produce a little podcast there for you, but unfortunately our information wasn't really very useful. So today we're going to bring you back to the core topics, the facts, and really distill things down. Brendan, why don't you tell people a little bit about the inspiration then for the podcast?
Yeah, guys. So the inspiration for this podcast sort of stemmed. I was reading a book, Yes Man, which some of you might be familiar with. It was later made into a movie with Jim Carrey. It was a loose iteration of the book. Essentially, it's about a guy that says yes to all these opportunities, and his life. He was a guy who was a bit of a hermit, living indoors, wasn't doing anything, and then all these opportunities start presenting themselves. And although some of them don't work out for the best, they kind of still do in a weird way.
Like The Alchemist.
Yeah. So even the stuff that goes bad, yeah, it's actually really good. If anybody has read the book by Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, it's essentially the same sort of idea, is that on the journey to life, these opportunities will present themselves, and even the ones that don't work out were ultimately part of the same plan to lead you to that ultimate opportunity. So I'll hand back now to Chris, and he can actually start talking through what we're trying to get to.
So I suppose, always the plan for this podcast really looking beyond, success, taking it to the elite. And from my personal experience, yes, people take opportunities in business, to get to that level, you're functioning, you're happy, you're having some success, you have to have, some yeses. But, I find a lot of modern, self-help, a lot of the latest stuff that I've read is about saying no, like protect your time, say no more often. And to an extent that's true, I think modern life, everybody's busy, say no to the stuff that's shit, that's wasting your time, on Facebook, on Snapchat, whatever, say no to that stuff. But it's easy for that to spill over once you've got some sort of success, you have commitments to work, commitments to social life. Sometimes the upward spiral of success brings you into a downward spiral of saying no to opportunities that could have huge benefit, both from a social and a business point of view. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, exactly. A lot of self-help now is sort of telling you to say no, and people can maybe misconstrue that, and they're saying no to a lot of things that are presenting themselves, and it's not even necessarily in a business context. It's maybe socially, and people get a bit wrapped up. And being part of the elite, being part of a professional elite involves going out and socializing. If you think that just working hard is going to be enough, no, you need to be the guy out there networking and doing these things, and saying no to those opportunities is going to cost you in the long run.
And as well as that, I totally agree that, there's levels to everything on, work, and people I see nationally, internationally. Successful people are the ones that have done well for themselves, achieved what they want to achieve, find themselves in a nice relationship, settle down, and don't really do anything socially beyond a couple of events anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a massive generalization. Top 1%, top 0.1% are those people who are involved in everything. May or may not be in relationships, but are social lions at the top of the chain in work, in play, in business, and they're the people that absorb all these opportunities that everyone else would pass up.
And that'll maybe lead on to another podcast about how to manage all these different things that you have going, all these
absolutely complex.
Yeah, but the main priority of this is how do you say yes to these opportunities, and it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy sometimes as just saying yes, because you have competing interests. You might have to have you might have a deadline for one thing, and you might have a deadline for another thing. And how can you say yes to these multiple things? And essentially, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie to you. But I was reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography recently, Total Recall. It's actually a really good one. And he was talking about when he made it in America. And essentially what he did was he was taking language classes in the morning, doing a 4 hour workout or a 5 hour workout. Then he was working on top of that. So he was getting up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, doing school, doing exercise, and doing a job on top of that, a menial job. So if you combine those, that's the three main targets of most people's lives. And he had a girlfriend or whatever on top of that. So we'll add in the fourth, relationships. If you can balance, that's probably the four main things to balance: job, health, sort of gym, relationship. Yeah.
I think for me as well, I've experienced it myself. Another podcast we need to talk about probably the expansion and contraction of those things and managing those things, because you can't go, I know, personal self-help tells you, 120 lifestyle and everything, business, work, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't, for me, as you go through phases and waves, there's certain things that you need to be obsessive about that need done, because they're both urgent, as in there's a short time that they can be done in, and they're important, meaning that they have to be done in that one shot.
Yeah.
So there are times where, that maybe you can let it slide a bit, but in saying that, the best quote I've heard, and maybe I've said this in previous podcasts, maybe I haven't, you hugely overestimate how much you can get done in a day, you hugely underestimate how much you can get done in a week, and then you can get almost anything done in a year. So, even if it's a busy day, look at those opportunities that present themselves. Again, it comes back to being present. And a lot of successful people, you think, I don't actually have that many opportunities. I say yes to most things, but like if you take a step back and you think over the last 2 weeks of all the things you've been invited to, all the events that you could have attended, and even things that perhaps that you've seen, advertised that'd be useful business, social-wise, friends that you haven't seen in a while, how many texts you get saying, we have to meet up. And instead of saying, let's meet up on Saturday at 9 o'clock, we say, yeah, we have to. And then you don't hear from that person again for 6 months.
Yeah, so I think it's about finding a way to make things work, because essentially what you're saying is that you've got to be obsessive about certain things at certain points.
Yeah.
So you might have this major deadline for a project coming up, and for the duration of that project, you have to be obsessive about that one thing.
Yeah.
But you might have an invite to something else. But it's then rescheduling, coming up with a time to make that work, not just saying no, but making that thing work regardless.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people it's very easy then to just say, no, that's the easy thing, instead of finding a way to make something work when the going gets tough.
The thing about it is as well, it's human nature to hugely overestimate that, the going has got tough. Like, for me personally, I've really started back into the gym the last 3-4 weeks. My work schedule, yes, fair enough, there was things that were happening at the start of the year that needed done. But, it hasn't changed that much. But the difference is over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's like, what? Fuck it, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm recording what I'm doing. I'm going to lift heavier weights every week. And, you just end up doing it, and it's not, you're like, you're driving home to tonight, I was like, oh shit, I could leave this to tomorrow. Maybe I haven't got time. Then you're like, get to the gym. Just do your one set, see where you're at. Same work, get into work, you don't want to go, sit down on your computer, start typing your first bit out, see where you're at. With drinks, we have probably let drinks slide a bit, but then again, last few weeks you get out, you get one drink, you see where you're at, so I think, seize the bull by the horns, say yes, take a step back, look at the opportunities that are going to benefit you the most. Business, social, you need to get a little circle. The habits of highly effective people talk about sharpening the saw, balancing these critical life skills. So take a step back, look at what you have, grab at everything, and I think that's the best quick and easy intervention that everybody listening can get involved in.
So I think when we're talking about this as well, we're generally saying yes, the opportunities is a good thing, but Then there comes a point where you have to refine what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
And a popular quote I've always heard is you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most.
Mm-hmm.
So that's maybe not a bad starting point. If you're going to say yes to the opportunity, say yes to those people who are going to benefit you most to hang out with. Don't be saying it to the loser friend who doesn't have a life and hangs out and doesn't want to do anything other than sit in the sofa and play PlayStation.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to be your time. You can't put a price on your time. I'm not saying hang out with all these people you used to know who've gone nowhere in life.
Yeah.
I mean, within you're very, very true. Within your sphere of influence, hanging out with successful people, be it in the social context, business context, or whatever, will pull you up.
Yeah, it creates sort of an upward vacuum. It pulls you up higher, pulls them up higher.
I think the social thing's huge. It's easier for people if you work in social jobs. If you're talking to people every day, it's not hard to maintain that social buzz that is critical. Anytime people talk about that elevator pitch, there's times where you meet somebody who's can potentially change your life, and you have 10 seconds to make an impression on them. And
sell me this pen.
Yeah,
Wall Street.
Yeah, sell me. Well, but to a bigger or lesser extent.
Yeah.
And having a social job, be it marketing, finance, whatever, makes things 10 times easier. If you're not in that sort of job where you have the buzz, you have that instant social sting, this whole thing of meeting up, taking opportunities and socializing, I think is huge.
No, definitely, 100%. I mean, I was actually just thinking there of that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, and not to go too far outside the scope of this yes man concept, but when I actually read that book, he tried to encourage his staff to spend all their money, so sort of saying yes to everything that presented itself, like I want that car, I want this house, and his thinking behind that was these guys have to be more productive if they're out there spending all this cash.
Mm-hmm.
So by them doing what in one sense was very
hedonistic.
Yeah. They were also being more productive at work because of it, because they needed to be. So there can be benefits from going out there and absolutely
spending all your money.
Not spending all your money, but essentially embracing the wild side of life a bit too.
Yeah.
Which I know sometimes, because we're sort of trying to present the buttoned up idea of like going out and being very professional, but there are sometimes where you just have to embrace life a bit more too.
Well, I mean, you're right. I totally subscribe to work hard, play hard, and I think we are becoming a bit off topic here. That if you're trying to keep this totally into bringing yourself into an upward spiral in terms of business or whatever, but yeah, I mean the whole yes thing. It's especially as you get older as well, like. So easy to lose friends, so easy to lose, connections with people. And as I said, some of it's perhaps due to people are in relationships, their life changes so significantly that they can't physically meet up, go out anymore. But, it's so, those relationships, close friendships you have are so valuable and so few and far in between. I really think it's huge value, saying yes, try and maintain those and push those forward.
Yeah, I think as a lot of people get older as well, this is a big feature of almost every episode, I think, as we're going forward in terms of the podcast. It's a lack of effort and a lot of excuses. A lot of people like to make excuses for not being able to do something, when the reality is they could have said yes and they could have done it, but they just couldn't be bothered. And it's a very harsh reality. A lot of people make excuses in their head and they justify reasons why instead of thinking how could I do this? Is there a way around this?
Yeah.
Like we had an example recently. We have a bit of a social circle tradition every year, something that we do. A lot of people just sort of reneged on it and didn't bother and didn't make the effort.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really pisses me off about those events is they see this, and it's definitely a thing as you get older in your late 20s, early 30s, see this, the social nicety of, oh, that sounds good, tell me more details. And then they just don't reply. Like, if you want to do something, don't do it, and just be straight about it. And that's another thing that the social or the constant self-help teaching, I do agree on. Like, if somebody says to me, do you want to do this? I would fake no interest if I don't want to do it. I'd just say, no, it's not for me, See this? Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. Oh, I'll see how I feel on the day, waste of time.
Yeah, not being rude, but being straight with a person is definitely
That
a
is a
huge
sign
plus.
of pure averageness. If averageness is a real word. Good people, great
It's
people.
not.
Well, good people, great people. I think you're straight.
Yes.
You know what you want. So I think that trying to keep it specific to that topic of saying yes and saying yes in the right situations, being social, business, whatever, probably give you the full circle. I think if it was me, I like to try and take away 5 points you can go out and apply today, take you from great to that 0.1%. The first point would be take a few days to step back. We always talk about presence, and I don't mean presence in a woo-woo sense, sitting and meditating on the edge of a cliff. But I mean, be really, really aware of the opportunities that you have, and anybody who's involved in a successful business and who's, has friendships, whatever, will be offered, huge opportunities that just kind of float by you. So first advice would be take a few days, step back and look at the opportunities that you have that you could say yes to, that you're making excuses that you're not doing, be it business, be it social, be it sporting events, exercise opportunities, anything. Second thing then, once you've distilled down what's on offer to you, think about what you can maximize, what's going to be the most benefit you could gain from these for your personal state, for what you're dealing with in the minute, the obstacles you're trying to overcome. And the third thing I would say, just do it. Take a few opportunities that you wouldn't normally do. Is there a Tony Robbins conference in town? Do it. Take the hit. Do it. Somebody you haven't seen in a long time invites you to a wedding. Potentially there's new clients there, whatever. Just do it. So that would be my 3 takeaway points from being the yes man. And obviously, be careful with your time. I'm not saying do yes to everything that you're asked, but the 3 things are, be aware of what's available, have a go at it, and then see what you learn from it. If you anything, what would your takeaway points be?
I think that was a lovely example of how to distill things down. You went from 5 points to 3, literally, as you were speaking. But yeah, that's essentially wrapped it up very nicely in a bow for us. I think that's a nice point to end on. So yeah, guys, that was Chris Carlos and myself, Brendan Lee, and that was the Point One podcast. You can reach us at our email. Do you want to give them our details there, Chris?
The Point One podcast at yahoo.com. You can get us on Instagram. Hashtag is the Point One podcast, and Twitter as well. It's
at Point One podcast. Yep.
At Point One podcast.
All right, guys. Till next week.
Thanks, guys. See you then.